Well, civil society-led Moral Regeneration Movement has announced its provincial interim structure in the Northwest. The structure comes after ongoing governance, service delivery issues and political instability in the province. First established 18 years ago as a national movement, but collapsed in the Northwest province due to governance issues, the structure now seeks to stabilise and re-establish a province functioning at its peak. The structure's charter, known as the Charter of Positive Values, seeks to reinforce the ideas of responsible freedom, rule of law, freedom of movement and expression, among others, and to overcome corruption in all its forms in provinces and nationally. Well, for more on this, we speak to Moral Regeneration Movement Convenor in the Northwest, Pastor Lesiba Kgwele. Muruti Kgwele, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on our program this morning. Very quickly, just take us through what were some of the main reasons behind your structure's collapse over the course of several years.
Good morning and thanks to you and your viewers as well. The major issue that resulted in the collapse of the structure was that the structure was deeply embedded in some of the government programs and not autonomous or independent. So the workshop that we held on Wednesday resolved that this should be a position or an opportunity for the movement to reclaim its position in civil society. That's why civil society organizations came and resolved that the autonomy and independence of the structure is critical because it will be able to make the desired impact if it is autonomous and it will be able to overcome some of the issues that got the structure to be dysfunctional. And as a result of that, then issues then began to emerge where civil society was denied a voice. So civil society needs to reclaim its voice, and it can only do so if the structure is functional and if the structure has grassroots support. So we are intended on relaunching the structure, starting from ward-based municipalities, districts, as well as leading to the provincial chapter, which we intend to do in the first quarter of the new year.
All right, well, let's talk about that approach. I mean, we know that the end goal is a full-on provincial launch in the Northwest. Yet you are doing it, ward by ward, sort of initiating this grassroots level movement, not an organization, not a political outfit, but a movement. Talk to us about the decision to do what you're trying to do this way, this sort of grassroots, ward by ward, piecemeal approach to ultimately ending up with that provincial launch.
Yes, as you'll understand, there's a need for us to reach out to other, because we have established an interim structure, which I've been, honored to lead towards the implementation of the action plan. So we have realized that there was, in the first place, no proper induction. And as a result of that, that is where people became confused as to who must do what, because the issue of funding is also very key. If you are self-funded, it will be very easy for you to establish autonomy. So the route that we are following, or that we'll be following and pursuing, is that one of involving traditional leaders, business, labor, agriculture, as you know, agriculture province, as well as ensuring that youth, women, as well as men organizations are on board, so that all of society begins as the approach is that one of mobilizing for an active citizenry. Active citizenry will be able to assist, deal with the challenges of service delivery, challenges of corruption, as you realize that it is something that is very endemic. So we have to approach this in a manner that says that it is society, civil society led, because the chairperson, Father Smangabiso Mkhatshwa, held a meeting with the Premier's office on Tuesday before the launch, so that there is an understanding that this is not a structure for the Premier's office or for government. It is a structure that's supposed to be civil-led, civil society-led, and it is one that is expected to mobilize broad society so that there is involvement, and that involvement will translate into active programs. Because without active programs, civil society has no voice to deal with those challenges. Among others, we have realized that the issue of patriotism, including Ubuntu, are very key to the programs, because the Charter of Positive Values, which was adopted by the Moral Regeneration, becomes very critical in the implementations of dealing with violence in schools, teenage pregnancies, and all of the social ills that we have seen. Service delivery, including, among others, issues of cohesion, social cohesion. We do not want this to be a structure somewhere in some communities to the exclusion of others. We want the structure to be as inclusive as possible, hence the approach.
Indeed. I want to talk about the main objectives, of course, of the movement, combating moral degeneration. It's a daunting task when we think about the issues that South Africans are facing today, issues such as crime, corruption, gender-based violence. You talk about active programs and all of these being led by citizens, for citizens. Just take us through at least an example of how one of these active programs would operate at a community-based level.
Well, after or with the involvement of communities, because you realize that at first this structure was misunderstood to be a church structure, or that's supposed to be led by churches. Well, churches are part of that civil society movement. So as such, we appreciate that there's been support from that angle, and that there's regular engagements that will culminate. The committee that we have instituted will develop an action plan after induction. As I said, one of the critical issues that usually lead to dysfunctionality is where structures are launched, but they do not have clear terms of reference that they're familiar with. So in this case, having defined that what we'll need from government and other business and others will be support for the implementation of our program. So intention is that we will go out, establish youth chapters, for an example, in higher education institutions, so that they are able to prepare the citizenry for them to embrace their responsibilities, among others as well. Because if you look to the culture of non-payment of services across municipalities, if that issue is not addressed and there's no active engagement and buy-in of the communities, we'll find ourselves at the same level where we are unable to realize the programs. Teenage pregnancies, your school governing bodies and all of that become also very key. Labor, across its own affiliations is also very key in making that very key contribution necessary to turn these social ills that we have encountered, that do not only reside in government, but there are civil service, there are civil society, they are happening within communities. Hence, society needs to react to the issues of crime. They need to to the issues of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, as we have seen, affecting mostly our youth and the unemployed.
Indeed.
Unemployed youth, yes.
Indeed. What is decidedly different about this interim structure, Moruti Kgwele, versus the previous is that you have gained this independence from government. You are no longer enjoying that marriage between the Moral Regeneration Movement and government. What was it about that previous relationship that hampered or hindered your efforts at turning things around in a lot of South Africa's society?
Well, as you understand, we are very conscious that during the state capture years, because the period that you relate to, of dysfunctionality of the structure and all of that, can largely be related to that period. So it's very important that civil society rises to its responsibilities so that it is able to drive not only transformation, but accelerated service delivery. So we have an interest as civil society to governance issues. We have an interest as well as ensuring that civil society is positioned to influence but support as well some of the key programs that will change, the outlook of our municipalities. We've got, for an example, cities and towns and villages that are not clean. And as a result of that, it's very necessary that we mobilize a broad, society, alliance and association that will be able to say this partnership must translate into visible programs that will also influence the way our communities look, the way our communities are serviced as well.
Indeed. Very quickly, Kgwele, earlier this year, in around June, I believe, there was a relaunch of the Moral Regeneration Movement in the Kruger municipality. And now we're seeing efforts at re-establishing the structure in the Northwest. Are there plans to expand nationally your footprint?
Remember, we are a national movement. We are not a provincial movement. We are a national movement. We are part of the moral regeneration that is led by Father Smangaliso Mkashwa. And that particular broad movement will be, of course, with the 20th anniversary of the moral regeneration. It is very critical that there is some form of consolidation of a report back to the nation. And as a province, we are excited that we are part or relaunching so that our communities in the Northwest are part of that broad process that will culminate into a national report to the nation so that we look and take stock to say what is it that the moral regeneration has achieved in the past 20 years and what are the shortfalls and how can we begin to consolidate and ensure that this particular movement find resonance in all that or programs that are supposed to influence the livelihoods of our communities, including addressing the issue of establishing the necessary partnerships to deal with youth unemployment and other challenges that are facing our communities.
Right. Well, Kgwele, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for joining us on our program.